fingers into my hand. On the other side came another with melting eyes, breath like a bed of violets, and banked up fun puckering her dainty mouth. What could I do but give her a hand as well? The flute began to gurgle anew, like a drinking spout in springtime, and away we went, faster and faster each minute, the boys and girls swinging themselves in time to the tune, and capering presently till their tender feet were twinkling over the ground in gay confusion. Faster and faster till, as the infection of the dance spread even to the outside groups, I capered too. My word, if they could have but seen me that night from the deck of the old Carolina, how they would have laughed! Swords swinging, coat tails flying, faster and faster, round and round we went, till limbs could stand no more. The gasping piper blew himself quite out, and the dance ended as abruptly as it commenced, the dancers melting away to join others or casting themselves panting on the turf. Certainly these Martian girls were blessed with an ingratiating simplicity. My new friend of the violet-scented breath hung back a little, then, after looking at me demurely for a minute or two, like a child that chooses a new playmate, came softly up, and, standing on tiptoe, kissed me on the cheek. It was not unpleasant, so I turned the other, whereon, guessing my meaning, without the smallest hesitation, she reached up again and pressed her pretty mouth to my bronzed skin a second time. Then, with a little sigh of satisfaction, she ran an arm through mine, saying, "Comrade, from what country have you come? I never saw one quite like you before." From what country have I come? Again the frown dropped down upon my forehead. Was I dreaming? Was I mad? Where indeed had I come from? I started back over my shoulder, and there, as if in answer to my thought, there, where the black tracery of flowering shrubs waved in the soft night wind, over a gap in the crumbling ivory ramparts, the sky was brightening. As I looked into the centre of that glow, a planet, magnified by the wonderful air, came swinging up, pale but splendid, and mapped by soft contours, green, violet, and red. I knew it on the minute. Heaven only knows how, but I knew it, and a desperate thrill of loneliness swept over me, a spasm of comprehension of the horrible void dividing us. Never did yearning babe stretch arms more wistfully to an unattainable mother than I at that moment to my Mother Earth. All her meanness and prosaicness was forgotten, all her imperfections and shortcomings. It was home, the one tangible thing in the glittering emptiness of the spheres. All my soul went into my eyes, and then I sneezed violently, and turning round, found that sweet damsel whose silky head nestled so friendly on my shoulders was tickling my nose with a feather she had picked up. Woman-like, she had forgotten all about her first question, and now asked another. "Will you come to supper with me, stranger? 'Tis nearly ready, I think." "To be able to say no to such an invitation, lady, is the first thing a young man should learn," I answered lightly. But then, seeing there was nothing save the most innocent friendliness in those hazel eyes, I went on. "But that stern rule may admit of variance. Only, as it chances, I have just supped at the public expense. If, instead, you would be a sailor's sweetheart for an hour, and take me to this show of yours, this princess's benefit, or whatever it is, I shall be obliged. My previous guide is hull down over the horizon, and I am clean out of my reckoning in this crowd." By way of reply, the little lady, light as an elf, took me by my finger tips, and, gleefully skipping forward, piloted me through the mazes of the city till we came out to the great square fronting on the palace, which rose beyond it like a white chalk cliff in the dull light. Not a taper showed anywhere round its circumference, but a mysterious kind of radiance like sea phosphorescence beamed from the palace porch. All was in such death-like silence that the nails in my ammunition boots made an unpleasant clanking as they struck on the marble pavement. Yet by the uncertain starlight I saw, to my surprise, the whole square was thronging with Martians, all facing towards the porch, as still, graven images, and as voiceless for once, as though they had indeed been marble. It was strange to see them sitting there in the twilight, waiting for I knew not what, and my friend's voice at my elbow almost startled me as she said, in a whisper, "The princess knows you are in the crowd, and desires you to go up upon the steps near where she will be." "Who brought her message?" I asked, gazing vaguely round, for none had spoken to us for an hour or more. "No one," said my companion, gently pushing me up an open way towards the palace steps left clear by the sitting Martians. "It came direct to her from me this minute." "But how?" I persisted. "Nay," said the girl, "if we stop to talk like this we shall not be placed before she comes, and thus throw a whole year's knowledge out." So, bottling my speculations, I allowed myself to be led up the first flight of worn, white steps to where, on the terrace between them and the next flight leading directly to the palace portico, was a flat, having a circle about 20 feet across, inlaid upon the marble with darker coloured blocks. Inside that circle, as I sat down close by it in the twilight, showed another circle, and then a final one, in whose inmost middle stood a tall iron tripod, and something atop of it covered by a cloth. All round the outer circles were magic symbols. I started as I recognized the meaning of some of them. Within these again, the inner circle held what looked like the representations of planets, ending, as I have said, in that dished hollow made out by countless dancers' feet, and its solitary tripod. Back again I glanced towards the square where the great concourse, 10,000 of them perhaps, were sitting mute and silent in the deepening shadows. Then back to the magic circles till the silence and expectancy of a strange scene began to possess me. Shadow down below, star-dusted heaven above, and not a figure moving, when suddenly something like a long-drawn sigh came up from the lips of the expectant multitude, and I was aware every eye had suddenly turned back to the palace porch, where, as we looked, a figure, wrapped in pale blue robes, appeared and stood for a minute, then stole down the steps with an eagerness in every movement holding us spellbound. I have seen many splendid pageants and many sights, each of which might be the talk of a lifetime, but somehow nothing so engrossing, so thrilling as that ghostly figure in flowing robes stealing across the piazza in starlight and silence, the princess of a broken kingdom, the priestess of a forgotten faith coming to her station to perform a jugglery of which she knew not even the meaning. It was my versatile friend Heru, and with quick, incisive steps, her whole frame ambient for a time with the fervour of her mission, she came swiftly down to within a dozen yards of where I stood. Heru indeed, but not the same princess as in the morning. An inspired princess rather, her slim body wrapped in blue and quivering with emotion, her face ashine with Delphic fire, her hair loose, her feet bare, until at last when, as she stood within the limit of the magic circle, her white hands upon her breast, her eyes flashing like planets themselves in the starshine, she looked so ghostly and unreal I felt for a minute I was dreaming. Then began a strange weird dance among the imagery of the rings, over which my earth planet was beginning to throw a haze of light. At first it was hardly more than a walk, a slow procession round the twin circumferences of the centred tripod, but soon it increased to an extraordinary graceful measure, a cadenced step without music or sound, that riveted my eyes to the dancer. Presently I saw those mystic twinkling feet of hers, as the dance became swifter, were performing a measured round amongst the planet signs, spelling out something, I knew not what, with quick, light touch amongst the zodiac figures, dancing out a soundless invocation of some kind as a dumb man might spell a message by touching letters. Quicker and quicker, for minute after minute, grew the dance. Swifter and swifter the swing of that light blue drapery as the priestess, with eager face and staring eyes, swung panting round upon her orbit, and redder over the city tops rose the circumference of the earth. It seemed to me all the silent multitude were breathing heavily as we watched that giddy dance, and whatever they felt, all my own senses seemed to be winding up upon that revolving figure as thread winds on a spindle. "When will she stop?" I whispered to my friend under my breath. "When the earth star rests in the roof niche of the temple it is climbing," she answered back. "And then?" "On the tripod is a globe of water. In it she will see the destiny of the year, and will tell us. The whiter the water stays, the better for us. It never varies from white. But we must not talk. See, she is stopping." And as I looked back, the dance was certainly ebbing now with such smoothly decreasing undulations that every heart began to beat calmer in response. There was a minute or two of such slow cessation, and then, to say she stopped were too gross a description. Motion rather died away from her, and the princess grounded as smoothly as a ship grounds in fine weather on a sandy bank. There she was at last, crouched beneath the tripod, one corner of the cloth covering it grasped in her hand, and her eyes fixed on the shining round just poised upon the distant run. Keenly the girl watched it slide into zenith. Then the cloth was snatched from the tripod top. As it fell it uncovered a beautiful and perfect globe of clear white glass, a foot or so in diameter, and obviously filled with the thinnest, most limpid water imaginable. At first it seemed to me, who stood near to the priestess of Mars with that beaming sphere directly between us and the newly risen world, that its smooth and flawless face was absolutely devoid of sign or colouring. Then, as the distant planet became stronger in the magnifying Martian air, or my eyes better accustomed to that sudden nucleus of brilliancy, a delicate and infinitely lovely network of colours came upon it. They were like the radiant prisms that sometimes flesh the surface of a bubble more than aught else for a time. But as I watched that mosaic of yellow and purple creep softly to and fro upon the globe, It seemed they slowly took form and meaning.